have gathered enough information, but just do tell us about the background and the purpose of this meeting.
We were meeting over these 3 days with 17 of our sub-recipients that we are supporting through the Global Fund grant under the Human Rights Program. These are the meetings that we have. We call them quarterly review meetings. So it means we have them every quarter. It is not just to assess progress on work done, because our teams are doing that on a weekly and monthly basis. But this is also to engage more critically, to reflect more critically, to also give our sub-recipients to reflect on what AFSA should improve on. So it's not a one-way process where we stand in front of them to say, you didn't perform, you didn't do that. Of course, performance is part of that, so that they can also feel proud of their own achievements. They can also understand where they still have to improve. But it also, for us, the meaningful part and the impactful part about it, it's when we see those gaps.
Yes.
Because it is when we see the gaps that we also know where we need to strengthen our efforts in building and enhancing their capacity to do the work. We are now almost at the end of the funding cycle. The funding cycle is ending March 2025, started April 2022. So we are now at the end of the financial year in this ending financial cycle. So now 1st April, starting what we call year 3, which is the last financial year in this funding cycle, is very critical. Not just because it's the last financial year, but also it's about now over the years that they have been implementing, because some of them have had them for longer than others, for more than 3 years. So now what has changed since they've been involved in the program? Not only at the level of meeting funder targets or meeting AIDS Foundation expectations, but at the level of the impact and outcomes at end user level. The people that they started supporting, the people that they started providing services and linking them to services. Where are they now? Or what are they working towards? Can we go back there anytime, even at the end of the project, and find those people at different spaces? And if the answer is yes, you can, then in between this period, what are we doing to ensure that that will really be the case?
The program that we are reviewing today, when the organizations are contracted at the beginning of the grant, they are given targets, they are given activities to implement on a quarterly basis. So now that we have come to the end of the year 2 of the grant, then we thought it's proper that we put our heads together to review and reflect on the successes, reflect on the challenges that the organizations are facing on the ground, and the key and vulnerable populations themselves as well, and see how we can better improve the program going forward.
That required legal support, it's 36, and then people using legal support, the 36 that was referred was the one that was said to be using the legal support. So I think in terms of, if you look at the 587 and the 318, we are sitting at 54% of the violations that were referred and we were able to resolve. I think this is an increase, and we need to, clap our hands for this one. Because what we've been seeing in the previous grant and in the previous quarters is that there is a high number of human rights violations that are reported, only to find that there is less, 2% of those were resolved. So this is a great improvement, and it shows that we were really looking at the cases that we previously reported and cleaning up the data to ensure that whoever reported a human rights violation gets attention. So thanks, colleagues, for this performance. I think I would like to applaud you for that as well.
So, and those sex workers, even if they can come on board to say, "I'm a sex worker, I was violated," the state might also now charge them for admitting that they are also breaking the law of the country, because now it's going to be a state versus an individual whereby they're going to prove a case.
We need to sensitize the community in terms of what the interventions when they are what you call approaching sex workers. You can recall as well in terms of what you call engagement, whereas the issue of decriminalization was part and parcel, looking at the community perspective. Majority were not supporting, majority. And who are those? Are the community members. And then again, they are the very same perpetrators towards sex workers. So that's why the link, you see the trend, speaking to one another in terms of the services. So that is why I'm saying it speaks the same language of their people that are accessing the services to sex workers. So if then Peter is going to get, or going to a sex worker, Peter is the person who's going to violate a sex worker. And in terms of freedom and security, one, because you know the assaults and everything, the killings and everything, it's Peter, not the police station or the police officers and so forth.
Yeah, in most cases, this one is informed by the stigma, whereby sex workers are stigmatized, and so when they go to the services at police station or clinics, whatever, so it informs them.
So remember that we are focusing on human rights in the aspect of HIV, TB, and STI. So what we are focusing on is to ensure that the key and priority people are having access to health services, your police station, etc., etc. So our the key priorities that we work with is sex workers as well as the adolescent and young people. So we document violations and the trends right now that we are getting is sex workers not being able to get their art treatment from the facility just because of the referral letters or because they are stigmatized of being sex workers. We also have adolescent and young people. I've always spoken about how we need youth-friendly services in the facilities to enable young people to access services. Because when they access the clinics, they are being discriminated, they are being stigmatized, so they don't really access the services. And if we are preaching 95 targets, and we are saying by 2030, we want to reach the HIV-free generation, then if young people cannot access the services, we are not going to have that. So we are working on those trends that we are getting. We spoke about the police violating the sex workers. That also needs to stop because human rights are for everyone who lives in South Africa.
Exactly.
And our target group through which they work is the sex work as the key population and the AYP, adults and youth population, as also one of those. And one of the critical elements of that work in terms of the thematic areas in their focus, it's many, it's about 5 of them, but they are ones that are cross-cutting. Stigma and discrimination cuts across.
Exactly.
There is stigma and discrimination. You go to a health facility, and that becomes worse with them, ordinarily, because of their complexities. If you're a sex worker, then on top of being a sex worker, you are HIV positive. So if you are just HIV positive, that is sort of normal now. But if I'm a sex worker, HIV positive, there is a more stigma that is attached to me.
Exactly.
People even have their own conclusion as to how I became HIV positive. If I go to a clinic for an STI problem, for services, you can go there for your own STI, but if I'm a sex worker, that becomes more complicated because I will be told that I'm changing men, I'm sleeping with different men all the time. Whose business is this? It's my business. How has that got to do with anyone else in the health facility? So when we talk of human rights violations and stigmatization of key population, to an extent that in other health facilities, they are even denied services. They will even be denied something as basic as a condom, to say, we have few condoms here. You can't be coming here every second day to take these condoms. think about other people as well. Don't they have a right to have sex with whoever and as many times that they
Yes.
want to have sex,
Yes.
wherever they want to have it, and access health services in whatever way or form? Why a barrier? And those are the human rights barriers that we are talking about. And then now you extend that to the kind of work that they are doing on the street. Then they get harassed. They get detained. They get all sorts of violations.
Yeah.
Simply because they are sex workers. So also the call for our SRs and supporting partners today to be deeply involved in their own spaces, to work, to take seriously their involvement in decriminalization of sex work
Yes.
contributes to
Yes.
those social norms that keep on stigmatizing sex workers. Sex work industry is the oldest industry.
Very old. It's been
If
there
you
for
talk about
years.
sex work, most people survived during apartheid and many other years of challenges because of sex work. And it is not by choice. People found themselves in positions that there was no other option but to put food on the table, to raise their children, to take their children to universities and any other platforms through engaging in sex work because there were no other means. So the barriers now and the labeling and the violations in some cases that even lead to fatal incidents
Yeah.
are the things that through this program we are fighting against. Through this donor funding and AIDS Foundation capacity building support and technical support, we are promoting, advocating for those rights.
And the next slide is talking about human rights violations reported by gender in Q7. So female, we are sitting at 82%. So most of our human rights violations were the gender that reported that human rights violation is female, and we are sitting at 971, which is 82% of our overall human rights violations that were reported in this quarter. And then males 210, which is 18%. And then those that prefer not to disclose 0%, and then transgender is sitting at 6, which is also below 1%.
Which speaks to social norms, which speaks to GBV, which speaks to sexual violence and the rate at which those violations are happening, so that it can then in the end give you this big number. And then which can then in the end gives you the explanation in the next slide aligned by who the likely perpetrators then are.
One of the mitigating strategies is to advance our advocacy activities in the communities.
Yeah.
Also sensitize communities, sensitize the law enforcement agents, your police, and other role players such as your DSD officials that normally provide psychosocial support and counseling
Yes.
to victims of gender-based violence, and also healthcare providers. So I think the better we create a supportive environment for victims, then they will have the courage to stand through the case as it is proceeding in court till the time that the case is successfully resolved or the perpetrators are sentenced.
Yes, yes, yes.
We are talking here about issues that are embedded in people's lives. We are talking here about lifelong challenges that at your age you were
Yeah.
even born into.
Yeah.
We are talking here about social behavioral issues whose whose roots are embedded
Yeah.
in stereotypes and the patriarchal form
Yes.
of societal arrangements that we are all living into. Hence the collaboration. Hence working with as many partners that our funding could allow us to.
Yes.
If AFSA had more money, we'll be covering every village, every household, every person. But you know, with funding, everything is always limited.
Yeah.
Hence, we always ask our partners, as you may have heard their reports, the expansion,
Yes.
their collaboration, They are working together with other service providers. And they are community-based activation interventions
Yes.
so that the things are not in between them. So if you can follow them when they do the
Collaboration, yeah.
work, you will also realize that in a given community, they come together with as many partners as possible and follow through those.
Yeah, we need to come together and as a nation and, work towards decriminalization, work towards
Yeah.
strengthening the laws and ensuring that if there are laws in South Africa, we can't speak about human rights and then it doesn't apply to other people. So as a community, it must not be because I'm a sex worker, I'm affected, and then that's my business. Everybody needs to come together, and then we fight this thing. Right now, we are complaining about load shedding. Let it be the same thing with everything else that is affecting other key and priority issues. Because if the sex workers and the AYP do not have access, obviously they're gonna continue to be vulnerable. So we need to come together and assist them. This is it's a long run, it's a long journey.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of interventions and a lot of, we can't be sitting down and being in meetings and talking. We need to have an action. That's where advocacy come in. So that's what we are going to do. If we have to write letters, emails and call and go to the offices of the ministers and whatnot, that's what we are going to do. So this is a battle and we are still going to fight it until we win it.
For me, that is what at least we need to refine. Thank you.